And now, let's talk about one of the most popular heavy tanks of World War II. By autumn 1943, the USSR started mass-producing a heavy tank called the IS-1. It weighed almost the same as the KV-1S, but it had a lot better armament and protection. Still, a simple boost of the basic parameters wasn't enough for the command. Its 85mm gun could pierce the German Tigers in the front, that's true, but only at a short distance. That solution obviously couldn't last. So the IS-1 was quickly upgraded to the IS-2 with a 122mm gun. It was destined to become the most mass-produced heavy tank of the Second World War, and probably the best of them. The main advantage of the IS-2, and also the most significant change compared to the previous model, was the main weapon. The 122mm gun penetrated enemy Panthers in the front from 2.5 kilometers. But even now, some skeptics still ask if it wouldn't be better to install a 100mm gun on the IS-2. It seemed to have the same penetration rate, but its fire rate was faster, and there was a possibility of increasing the ammo load. The usual argument against this idea is that the HE shells of the 122mm gun were a lot more powerful, allowing the tank to hit not only other vehicles, but also enemy fortifications. The truth, as always, is a bit more complicated. The decision to assemble the IS-2 with specifically this weapon wasn't harmful, but the HE shells weren't the main reason there. First of all, the works on this tank began in summer of 1943. At that moment, the choice didn't even exist. It was more than a year before the USSR engineers managed to mass-produce decent 100mm AP shells, and the 122mm gun was ready and had all the shells it needed. Of course, when they figured out how to make the 100mm ones, they tested them on the IS-2, but the results weren't promising at all. The unitary shells were quite long, so they'd only been able to get 29 of them inside the tank, against 28 of the 122mm shells. Later, the engineers miraculously enriched the ammunition up to 36 shots, but the tests showed that the loader couldn't reach the extra shells. Thus, the promised increased fire rate couldn't be achieved due to usability issues. The penetration rate should have been somewhat the same, but there also was a catch. If we fire at the same Panthers from those two guns, the 120mm one will penetrate it from 2.5 kilometers distance, and even more. As for the 100mm one, it will pierce the enemy's armor only from a distance of less than 1.5 kilometers. Also, the 122mm gun had a huge success against the later German tanks. They had solid but fragile armor that cracked like ice, even after a ricochet. And we're not even talking about the beyond armor effect. The IS-2 was amazing there. So, as it turns out, the powerful HE shells were just one of the many reasons to welcome the 122mm guns in the Soviet heavy tank for years and years. The IS-2 regiment was a great power-up for tank forces. These machines could often be spotted behind the attacking T-34-85, clearing the way for them by destroying tanks and destroyers from great distances. They proved to be a great anti-tank force as well. Moreover, they were almost as agile as the T-34-85, and the armor could withstand a direct hit from the PAK-40, a German anti-tank gun. Still, this kind of protection wasn't enough for the command, which led to the creation of the IS-3. But this is a story for another time.